In 356 BC, in the small but fierce kingdom of Macedon, a boy was born whose name would echo through history like thunder. That boy was Alexander III, later known as Alexander the Great, not because of his size, but because of his unstoppable ambition, unmatched intelligence, and the empire he built before turning 33. His birth itself felt like an act of destiny. On the night he came into the world, the temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, burned to the ground. Many believed it was no coincidence. The world was making space for a new wonder to rise. His father, King Philip II, was a brilliant warrior king who had transformed Macedon into a formidable military power. His mother, Queen Olympias, was known for her sharp mind and strong spiritual beliefs. She often told young Alexander that his fate was larger than any ordinary crown. As a child, Alexander was fearless, intensely curious, and possessed a fiery spirit. Recognizing this, his father hired the greatest mind of the Eretha, philosopher Aristotle, to be his tutor. Aristotle didn't just teach him about books. He taught him science, philosophy, medicine, politics, and the art of war. But most importantly, he instilled in Alexander the belief that the world was meant to be explored, not feared. When Alexander was just 13, a wild black horse was brought to his father's court. The animal was magnificent but untamable, kicking and bucking, paralyzing with fear every man who tried to ride it. King Philip dismissed it as useless, but Alexander saw something others had missed. He noticed the horse wasn't violent. It was terrified of its own shadow. So he did something remarkable. He calmly approached the horse, turned it toward the sun so its shadow disappeared behind it, and then gently climbed onto its back. The entire court watched in stunned silence as he rode the once terrifying beast in a perfect circle. The horse, calmed and trusting, was his. Alexander named him Bucephalus, and that horse became his loyal companion in every battle for the rest of its life. Seeing this, King Philip, his eyes filled with tears of pride, told his son, "Macedon is too small for you." History would prove him right. At just 20 years old, Alexander's world was shattered when his father was assassinated. Macedon's enemies saw an opportunity. They believed the young, inexperienced prince would fail. Rebellions began to flare up, and neighboring kingdoms prepared to attack. But Alexander didn't wait. He struck first. With shocking speed and brutal efficiency, he crushed the uprisings, united Greece under his command, and proved he wasn't just a prince, he was a force of nature. And with his kingdom secure, he set his eyes on an impossible target, the Persian Empire, the strongest power on earth. At that time, the Persian Empire was a behemoth, the largest and most powerful empire the world had ever seen, ruled by King Darius III. It stretched from modern-day Turkey to Egypt, from Iran to the borders of India. It was 50 times the size of Alexander's little kingdom of Macedon. To even think of challenging it was madness, but Alexander marched toward it not with fear, but with unwavering confidence. His first major test came at the Battle of the Granicus. In 334 BC, Alexander's army was heavily outnumbered. His own generals advised caution, but Alexander refused to wait. He personally led the cavalry charge straight across the river, smashing into the Persian lines. The audacity of the attack shocked everyone. The Persians, caught completely off guard, were defeated. It was the first tremor of a storm that would soon engulf the known world. A year later, at the Battle of Issus, King Darius decided to crush this upstart Macedonian once and for all. When Alexander entered Darius's captured tent, he found the king's mother, wife, and daughters, terrified and expecting the worst. But instead of claiming them as prizes of war, Alexander bowed respectfully. He assured them of their safety and declared, "They are royalty. Treat them with honor." From that moment on, even his enemies began to admire him. He wasn't just a conqueror, he was a king with a different vision. Alexander didn't just invade lands, he connected them. He believed in a world where cultures could blend, not just be destroyed. He encouraged Greek and Persian traditions to merge. He married a Persian princess named Roxana, and he trained foreign soldiers to fight alongside his Macedonians. When he arrived in Egypt, he wasn't met with resistance but was welcomed as a liberator from harsh Persian rule. There, he founded the legendary city of Alexandria, which would become one of the greatest centers of knowledge, culture, and trade in human history. The priests of Egypt were so impressed they declared him a living god, the son of Zeus. Alexander, understanding the power of such a title, didn't deny it. After conquering most of the Persian Empire, Alexander pushed his army further east into the unknown lands of India. There, at the Battle of the Hydaspes River in 326 BC, he faced his most formidable opponent yet, King Porus, a giant of a man who led an army of armored war elephants. The monsoon rains had turned the battlefield into a sea of mud. Lightning split the sky as the river surged, a raging barrier between the two armies. It was pure chaos. But Alexander's genius shone brightest in chaos. Under the cover of a stormy night, he led a portion of his army across the treacherous river and attacked Porus from the side, taking him by complete surprise. The battle was ferocious. Indian war elephants trampled the ground like living tanks, while the Macedonian cavalry struck like lightning. In the end, Porus was defeated and captured, wounded but unbowed. The towering king was brought before Alexander. Alexander asked him a simple question: "How should I treat you, Porus?" Without a hint of fear, replied, "Like a king treats another king." Alexander was so impressed by his courage and dignity that he not only spared his life, but returned his kingdom and made him a trusted ally. Alexander's dream was to march to the very edge of the world. But his soldiers, exhausted after 11 years of non-stop conquest, had reached their limit. They missed their homes, their families, and the idea of peace. For the first and only time, the unconquerable king had to bow to the will of his men. He agreed to turn back. In 323 BC, in the great city of Babylon, Alexander fell mysteriously ill. Some say it was a fever. Some say poison. Others say it was simply exhaustion from carrying the weight of a world on his shoulders. At just 32 years old, the greatest conqueror in history lay dying. His generals gathered around his bed, desperate, and asked, "To whom do you leave your empire?" With his fading breath, he whispered, to the strongest. Days later, the king who had never lost a battle lost his final one to life itself. His vast empire, stretching across 3 continents, was torn apart by his generals. The unified world he had fought to build did not survive him for long. But his legacy, that was eternal. He created one of the largest empires in history before the age of 33. He never lost a single battle. He spread Greek culture across Asia, Egypt, and Europe, founding more than 20 cities, many named Alexandria, that became beacons of learning. He changed the course of world history forever. Kings inherit crowns. Warriors earn glory. But legends, they conquer time itself. And Alexander did not conquer the world simply to rule it. He conquered it to prove that it could be done. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories of the figures who shaped our world. See you next time.